Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Total Digestive. Yeah, it makes sense in my head, shut up. So we have two problems in life, one being that we never have enough time, and two being that YouTube is dreadful at doing what it's supposed to do. I'm going to try and help with both of those things in a small way. So, the real issue with YouTube right now is that subscriptions are really unreliable. I get reports every day, en masse, from people on Twitter saying, this video did not appear in my sub box, I haven't seen any videos from you this week, where are you, what's going on, so on and so forth, and it's very hard to keep these people up to date. And it's just because, for some stupid reason, YouTube can't manage a very simple thing, the idea of sending subscribed videos to the people that actually subscribe to the channels. You'd think that would be a fairly easy thing to do, but apparently not. The second problem, of course, being that I produce a lot of content every week, a really large amount indeed. I also make a lot of long videos. This means that you don't necessarily have time to watch them all. So, the point of this particular video series is to once a week round up everything that I've done. And it saves you time because I can give you the TLDR of everything I've done that week. So if you don't have time to watch 5-6 hours of my content, I can totally understand that. I'm definitely not that important. So I will give you a condensed version. I can also use this to update you on things that have changed since then. Let's say, for instance, I do a WTF Is, and then 3 days down the line, the game is patched to resolve one of those issues, and I know about it. I can then tell you in the weekly roundup, the Total Digestive. So, what I can also do is give you links. So this tries to get around the subscription problem by cataloging everything that I do on a weekly basis and letting you select via a nice little annotation screen. So I'm going to categorize everything, I'm going to put it up on the screen, and then you can click on whatever you want to go and visit that particular video. So it makes it nice and easy to spot the stuff that you missed. Okay, so since this is the first one in the series, and it took me a little bit longer than it should have to get done, I'm going to start it from April the 20th, that being the previous Saturday, and run through all the content that I've done. So, let's start with Content Patch. There were 4 Content Patch episodes this week. I missed one on Thursday. Very sorry about that. That was simply because I just got way too bogged down in work. Now, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to run down everything that was mentioned, but I would like to point out a couple of things which I think are worth watching if you don't regularly see Content Patch. Maybe you just don't want to see all of it. So, the first thing would be my lengthy discussion of Blizzard WCS North America. That one was on the April the 22nd episode. I'd recommend checking that one out because it goes really in depth on all the problems that the North American WCS system actually has. That's a very big Blizzard run event, so it's a pretty big deal. The other thing that I would check out would probably be the Vlambeer Clone Wars. That was on the April the 24th episode. That is about the indie developer Vlambeer suffering from repeated cloning and wholesale ripoff of various titles that they've made. One, it's kind of funny, but in a rather sad way because of cool devs getting ripped off. And secondly, I think it's very important to raise awareness of these clones and make sure that they don't get away with it. I'd also suggest if you're into indie bundles, go and check out the April 26th episode because I did highlight a couple of bundles you may not previously have been aware of. There was also sales in that particular episode. There wasn't a lot of news, so I decided to just basically do a sale box as part of Content Patch. But by the time you watch this, most of those sales will have expired, so that won't be all that useful for you. As always, it's worth checking out the Content Patch to find out what the OC Remix track of the day was. My track of the week... Yeah, let's go that far. Let's meta this stuff. My track of the week, I think, has got to be the track from Echo the Dolphin. That was actually quite the thing. The name of that particular track was Waves of Stone from Echo the Tides of Time, and that was on the April the 26th episode. That is an absolutely phenomenal track. I would strongly recommend that you go and check it out. The download link is in the description on Content Patch April 26th. Alright, WTF Is. So, there were 4 WTF Is episodes released last week, and they are in order. WTF Is God Mode, Dead Island Riptide, Divinity Original Sins Pre-Alpha, and Dyad. So let's start with God Mode. God Mode is really not worth buying, even for $10. The reason I say that is simply because what God Mode has to offer is not well executed, and there are plenty of other alternatives which are equally good, or indeed a lot better, that are either free or actually come included in a previous release. God Mode, unfortunately, just doesn't do anything particularly well. I don't find its combat to be that enjoyable, and while the mythological creatures and the overall setting is pretty cool, as well as a randomized system which gives you various little conditions for each arena fight, the overall game is just not particularly well tied together. Takes too long to actually earn items. The combat is just boring. Everything drags on for way too long. There are no weapon pickups in-game or anything along those lines, so you're stuck with the same 2 guns till supposedly the end of time. I don't know what the hell is going on with that. And overall, it's a very badly executed title. Also, a special note has to go to just how damn annoying the announcer is in God Mode. Wrap that up with a 45 frames per second frame limit for some reason, as well as dodgy controls and an unreliable game that seems to crash or freeze at random intervals, and you have a recipe for something that is worth avoiding at all costs. Alternatives, I would recommend Killing Floor, I would recommend the Horde mode in Team Fortress 2, and I would certainly recommend Warframe, which is a free-to-play game which is far superior to God Mode in every possible respect. Alright, let's move on to Dead Island Riptide. So, Dead Island Riptide is a game that I did enjoy an awful lot, although I certainly have the feeling that if you didn't like the original Dead Island, this is not going to convince you otherwise. It's very much a sequel in terms of the way that the story continues on and the fact that the characters become more advanced, but there is a lot of reused assets in this game, and it's pretty much the same Dead Island that you knew from last year. Now, if you don't object to that and you're willing to take that on for the reduced price of $40 of what is essentially a gigantic expand-alone, then you will probably have a reasonable amount of good fun with Dead Island. There are some technical problems, such as the lack of FOV slider. You can modify it in the config files, but it makes the guns stop working correctly, which is very annoying indeed. There is also a mouse acceleration issue, and mics were set to permanently on, although it was possible to mute them in Steam. Overall, it's reasonable fun, schlocky B-movie fun, not something I would ever consider to be a great game, but it's a good time, especially if you happen to want to play it in co-op, which is where the game happens to shine thanks to good character synergy. Divinity Original Sin. Now, the pre-alpha of this game actually impressed me a great deal. It's got an awful lot to it. It's an in-depth CRPG by Larian, the guys that brought you the previous Divinity games. They're currently working on Dragon Commander as well, which is an entirely different kind of game. And this just finished a very successful Kickstarter. It almost hit $1 million. It very much doubled the amount they were asking for, which was very good indeed. That should hopefully mean that there is going to be an awful lot to the game. Looks like they'd already done a significant amount of work to it, because I got to play for over an hour with the developer, and there was an awful lot to it. There was detailed dialogue system. There was a system which allowed you to argue with your co-op partner using in-game social stats, which I liked a lot. Turn-based combat with a lot of different effects, combos, and strategies involved in it, as well as full freedom to the point where you can basically attack and kill anybody. It also doesn't have a traditional questing system. It's very much an investigation, the idea that you find out about quests through various different conversations or things that you find in the world. You're not just directly given them with an exclamation mark above the head and so on and so forth. I think that game has definitely got a lot of potential. The pre-alpha was extremely buggy, but that is, of course, to be expected, and everything really is subject to change when it comes to that particular game. Looking promising, though, very much so. And finally, Dyad. Now, Dyad is not a game that I really had a huge amount of fun with. It is a game about tunnel racing and comboing shots together and hooking things together. It's very hard to explain without you actually seeing the video. You can probably see it on the screen right now. It's bonkers. It really is. There's a lot of color flying at you to the point where it actually gave me eye strain. I didn't find it comfortable to play at all after maybe the first 15 minutes. I also found the controls to be a little bit unsuited to what they were asking for. I feel it would work better if you had mouse control or finer control with an analog stick. Digital movement with that game means that you often miss a lot of shots, which doesn't seem to work all that well for me at all. It's got a lot of interesting concepts in it, but it's not the kind of game that I will play on a regular basis. You can probably tell just by looking at it whether or not it's the kind of game that you're into. As I said, it's certainly quite creative, there's no question about that. I do applaud them for that, but in terms of its actual fun value, unless you are very much a speedrunner, someone that enjoys the competitive leaderboard and the score attack gameplay, then Dyad is probably not for you. So that wraps up the WTF Is that I did in this particular week. However, I do have more games that were covered in a couple of different formats, so let's wrap everything up then with the remainder, the big sack of stuff that doesn't really fit in anywhere else. Alright, so I released 2 more PAX videos this week. I still have a few more to get out, although I'm sort of reaching the end. Smashbuck Champions was the first. That's very much a light-hearted take on Bloodline Champions. It's an arena combat game. I wouldn't call it a MOBA because, one, I hate that term, even though it's actually fairly accurate for this, because it's nothing like Dota. It's not an Aeon of Strife style of game. There's a variety of different game modes and some rather creative champions, and it's more about a sort of 3-on-3 arena combat setting with various different abilities. You have those abilities unlocked from the start. There's no leveling or anything like that, so it's a simplified arena combat game. It does have some interesting elements. The ability to jump and actually gain a height advantage and jump on other people is a very cool notion that hasn't been used in most Dota or arena games so far, and I do like the champions. I think that they put a lot of effort into really differentiating them and making some very creative and fun things. I don't know how much I'd play it, but I think it might have some competitive potential. I'd recommend you go and check out Smashbuck Champions if that's the kind of game that you're into. The other game that I released from PAX was Raise the Dead, co-commentated by a guy that sounded like Tom Hanks. He really did. It was kind of crazy. Now, this game is very much a cross between Pikmin and Stubbs the Zombie, as far as I'm concerned, and you gather a zombie horde and make your way through various levels. You can control various different kinds of zombie, including zombie dogs, as well as regular zombies and all sorts of different kinds of things in order to complete your objective. So it's part action. I call it an action puzzler, actually. That's probably the best way to deal with it, with some real-time strategy elements put in there for good measure. I think it's got a lot of potential to be fun. It's got a good sense of humor. The controls need some work. I was struggling with it just a little bit. It may be because I'm a dumbass and don't really have all that much experience using a 360 pad, and the performance wasn't so good either. It was really hitting the frame rate, so that's something they have to tighten up. But I feel like game has some potential for enjoyment. Now, what are the games that I do? I actually did a Dota game this week, Hyper Incompetent Single Draft Disaster. In this case, I did Batrider. He's a fun hero, but it took me a while to really get used to him, and I still don't think I fully understand the concept. He's very strange. He's got a lot of potential, I think, and apparently, so I was told afterwards by r/Dota2, which is a great subreddit. Don't go and crap it up, please. Please read, please lurk, please understand. They're very helpful when you don't antagonize them. Anyway, that hero is apparently the #1 ban, so he's pretty hardcore. I didn't really get used to him, but I was able to pull off a couple of really cool moves with him that I liked. I would like to play him more. I think I could get used to him. Turns out my build was actually reasonable in terms of my skill order, but apparently the items were completely off. I was using the recommendeds, which was not a good idea. But that was a fun game. I'd say I had a lot of fun with that one anyway. I think there was a few cool moves, so that one's worth watching. And I did a Smite video. I did a What's Changed on that. I'm actually considering turning that into an entire series. That would be a good idea, because a lot of these PC games do get significant updates, especially when they're in free-to-play. So coming back later down the line, looking at what's changed is a good notion. The Smite video I would strongly recommend watching because it has 2 games in it. It's got an arena as well as a regular mode. And the regular mode, of course, being the Conquest mode there. I play 2 different gods. I play Anubis in Arena, and I play Sobek in the Conquest mode. Cool moves with Sobek, actually. If you're looking for good gameplay, you're not going to find it in the arena, but I think that my Sobek play was pretty good, and you're going to learn a lot about Smite. If you just watch the beta video and don't know what's changed, there has been a lot of updates for that game, so it's definitely worth checking out the Smite video. Alright, if you want to head on over to youtube.com/thegamestation, you will find the Game Station podcast for this week. This time around, we had Rui on the show, and he was able to give a good discussion. We talked about a lot of things. We actually focused a lot on the PlayStation Vita game Soul Sacrifice, as well as a variety of other titles. I would recommend it. I think it was a really good episode. We had a few technical problems, but you shouldn't see too many of those in the VOD, so that's always good, and Rui was a good guest. Please go check him out over on youtube.com/Ruricane. That is youtube.com/Ruricane. Alright, and one final thing before I go, of course, I do have a second channel. Some of you don't know about that. I would suggest that if you have any interest in StarCraft, you go there, because that entire channel is dedicated to StarCraft. It's dedicated to the esports team that I sponsor, that being Axiom, as well as various casts and my own streams and ladder playthroughs. So I make a series called I Suck at StarCraft 2. I released a new episode of that this week. It's called Episode 5, All or Nothing, and it's about dealing with a Zerg all-in as Terran. It's alright. I don't know if the game is really that good, but I think that it's got an important message along with it. Also, exciting announcement regarding my tournament. I've started a new $10,000 Shoutcraft America tournament that is for Grandmasters in America as well as continental American countries like Mexico, Canada, as well as the South American nations. Worth checking that out. Casts-wise, I actually did a series of casts. There's quite a few up there. If you check that out, you'll find Quantic versus Root, Millennium versus Team Liquid. These are all best of 9 team series for the Acer Team Story Cup. Caronte Esports versus Mouse Sports, and Axiom versus Root Gaming. If you only watch one series this week, please make it Caronte versus Mouse Sports, because that series is so very good. Oh, it is mind-blowingly good. I would strongly recommend that, and go check that all over on youtube.com/TotalBiscuit. There you go, folks. There is your Total Digestive, a digest of everything that's been going on in the world of me. I know it sounds ridiculously arrogant, doesn't it? Hopefully this was somewhat helpful to you. I'll be trying to do this every week to keep you up to date on everything that is going on, and future plans and stuff I will not include in this video. I do vlogs for that anyway, so that's really not a big deal. But those are the videos I've done this week. Go check them out. Go and have a look. My name's been TotalBiscuit. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Here comes a tiny, like the tiniest run-by of all time. 2 Marauders and a Marine. God, it's like Justin Bieber and his 2 bodyguards dashing in right here, making a move on that Colossus, and Fanboy Colossus drives them away. Bieber dies, the bodyguards go home in disgrace, but are celebrated as heroes by the internet because the internet is a malevolent and evil place.